Where would you like us to go? Would you like us to go over to the fireplace?
And set fire to each other.
It just seems that every time we're set to go, something happens with Ozzy's health, and so we'll get there.
I'm on constant tranquilizers prescribed by the doctor. I'm insane.
And I want to thank everyone for all their texts and goodwill. Love they've sent to us.
He was the Prince of Darkness, the man who turned chaos into music and gave heavy metal its heartbeat. For over 50 years, Ozzy Osbourne stood unshaken, surviving addiction, scandals, and even near death itself. But now, Sharon has revealed a truth so devastating that it has left fans stunned worldwide. Ozzy can no longer walk, and after decades of rebellion, he is preparing for one final farewell. Sharon Osbourne's recent revelation shook the rock world to its core. This time, the threat was not a wild stunt or a bad decision. It was something no amount of defiance could fight off. In her emotional interview, Sharon admitted that Ozzy's Parkinson's disease had progressed far faster and far more brutally than anyone expected. For years, she had reassured worried fans that the condition was not a death sentence, that they could adjust their lives and carry on. But the optimism has given way to a reality that is impossible to ignore. Ozzy can no longer walk on his own. The image is hard to reconcile. The same man who once ran across festival stages, howled into microphones with unstoppable energy, and commanded arenas with a single scream, is now struggling with the most basic of movements. According to Sharon, the disease has targeted his legs with merciless aggression, robbing him of independence and leaving her as his constant caregiver. She watches him fight through each day, balancing medical care with the emotional toll of watching the man she loves trapped in a body that no longer obeys him. The family underestimated just how vicious Parkinson's could be, imagining at first that it would be an inconvenience, something they could live with. But Sharon now admits those early hopes were painfully naive. For longtime fans who grew up seeing him as invincible, the news was devastating, forcing them to face the truth that time and illness had finally caught up with the Prince of Darkness.
Am I there, you know? Why are you crying?
Because it just means so much to him what he does. He loves to perform. It is the air that he breathes, and this is the longest he's ever been home.
But just as the rock community was grappling with that grim picture, Sharon revealed that Ozzy had made a decision no one was prepared for, a choice that would close the final chapter of his legendary career. When Sharon finally delivered the news that Ozzy was preparing for his last ever performance, the rock world stopped in its tracks. For decades, fans had lived with the idea that Ozzy Osbourne was eternal, that no matter how many near-death accidents, surgeries, or scandals he endured, he would always find his way back to the stage. But this time, there would be no comeback tour, no secret announcement of new dates. This was the end. Sharon revealed that on July 5, 2025, Ozzy will step onto a stage one final time in Birmingham, the industrial city where his journey began and where heavy metal itself was born. The event, fittingly titled Back to the Beginning, will reunite the original Black Sabbath lineup for the first time in over 20 years. Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, and Ozzy Osbourne, the same four men who once terrified parents, outraged the press, and redefined rock music forever, will share the stage in their hometown for a farewell that promises to be as historic as it is emotional. For Ozzy, it's more than just a concert. It's a pilgrimage back to where it all started, to the rough streets of Aston, where he dreamed of being a rock star, and to the city that shaped his dark, unrelenting sound. Fans who had watched his career with awe immediately understood the magnitude of this announcement. This would not just be a show, it would be the closing of a book that spanned 5 decades. Tickets are expected to sell out instantly, with fans traveling from around the world to witness what can only be described as the end of an era. The reunion itself adds to the weight of the moment. Old wounds between the band members will be set aside for one night to honor the legacy they built together and to stand united with Ozzy as he says goodbye. For many, the thought of hearing Paranoid, or Iron Man, performed by the original lineup one last time is nothing short of monumental. Ozzy Osbourne's rise to become the Prince of Darkness seems almost impossible when you look at where he started. Born John Michael Osbourne on December 3, 1948, in the rough industrial town of Aston, Birmingham. He grew up in poverty that crushed most kids before they had a chance to dream. His father, Jack, worked endless night shifts as a toolmaker while his mother, Lillian, labored in a factory. Even with both parents working, there was barely enough to go around for their 6 children. School provided no refuge. Struggling with severe dyslexia, he could not keep up in class. Instead of support, he was met with ridicule. Teachers wrote him off as dumb, and classmates bullied him relentlessly. That bullying escalated into something even darker. At the age of 11, he became the victim of abuse by older boys, a traumatic experience that scarred him deeply and left him with nightmares that would shadow him into adulthood. With no outlet to process his pain, Ozzy spiraled into depression. By the time he was 14, he had already tried to end his life more than once, including a chilling attempt where he tied a noose from his mother's clothesline and jumped from a chair. His father discovered him just in time, only to beat him afterwards, leaving Ozzy with the twisted belief that even his cries for help were something to be punished. Violence was a daily part of his world. Crime soon followed. He stole records to feed his obsession with music and broke into shops, chasing thrills that distracted him from his inner turmoil. At 17, he was caught robbing a clothing store, and when he could not pay the fine, his father refused to help, forcing him to serve 6 weeks in Winston Green prison. Yet in the midst of all this chaos, one moment changed his life forever. The day he heard the Beatles' hit "She Loves You" blasting from a neighbor's radio in 1963. In that instant, he believed he was meant for something greater. The voice in his head told him that music was the only way out, the only way to escape poverty, abuse, and despair. The turning point in Ozzy Osbourne's life came when he crossed paths with 3 other working-class kids from Birmingham, who, like him, were searching for a way out of dead-end jobs and poverty. Guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward were experimenting with a new sound, something darker, heavier, and more menacing than anything that had come before. When Ozzy joined forces with them in 1968, they named their band Black Sabbath, inspired by a horror movie poster they saw outside a cinema. From the start, they were unlike anything the rock world had ever heard. Tony's down-tuned guitar riffs, born out of necessity after he lost fingertips in a factory accident, combined with Geezer's apocalyptic lyrics and Bill's thunderous drumming, created a soundscape that was heavy, eerie, and foreboding. But it was Ozzy's voice that made it unforgettable. Haunting, raw, and powerful, his vocals gave life to the darkness, turning songs into chilling anthems. Their debut album, Black Sabbath, released in 1970, opened with the ominous tolling of church bells and launched listeners into a world of doom, fear, and mysticism. Later that same year, they released Paranoid, an album that cemented their status as pioneers of heavy metal. Songs like Iron Man, War Pigs, and the title track became generational anthems, echoing through smoky basements, concert halls, and eventually stadiums around the world. Critics dismissed them as noise, labeling their music satanic, but fans knew it was something groundbreaking. It was rebellion in its purest form. Black Sabbath did not just play music. They created an atmosphere, a sound so heavy and uncompromising that it gave birth to an entirely new genre. Young musicians from across the globe, from Metallica to Pantera, would later credit Sabbath for shaping the direction of their own careers. And at the center of it all was Ozzy, the unlikely frontman who had gone from a broken teenager with nothing to lose to the voice of a cultural revolution. By the late 1970s, the chaos that made Ozzy Osbourne such a magnetic frontman for Black Sabbath was also tearing the band apart. His addictions and erratic behavior had become impossible for the group to manage, and in 1979, Ozzy was fired from the very band he had helped create. To many, it looked like the end. But what no one expected was that this low point would mark the beginning of an even greater chapter in his career. With Sharon Osbourne, soon to be Sharon Osbourne, stepping in as his manager and eventually his wife, Ozzy was pulled back from the brink. Sharon saw potential where others only saw a washed-up addict, and she rebuilt him from the ground up. The result was Blizzard of Oz in 1980, a groundbreaking album that introduced classics like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. The record proved that Ozzy was not just the voice of Black Sabbath, he was a force all his own. The follow-up, Diary of a Madman, released in 1981, cemented his solo legend. his live performances became notorious, not only for his sheer energy, but also for the shocking stunts that fed into his growing mythology. In 1982, during a concert in Des Moines, a fan threw a live bat on stage, and Ozzy, thinking it was rubber, bit into it, an act that horrified the public and forever etched his reputation as the Prince of Darkness. As the 1980s progressed, Sharon helped expand Ozzy's empire beyond music. With Ozzfest, launched in the mid-1990s, he created a touring festival that became a rite of passage for new and established metal bands alike, further cementing his role as a godfather figure to the genre. Yet even as his career flourished, his personal battles with addiction, accidents, and near-death experiences threatened to undo everything he had built, setting the stage for the darkest and most dangerous chapters of his life. As Ozzy Osbourne's solo career soared, his battles with addiction were no secret. Drugs and alcohol became almost as much a part of his legend as his music, and for years, Ozzy lived on the edge of self-destruction. One of the most infamous episodes came in 1982, when in a drunken haze, he urinated on a monument near the Alamo, an act that got him arrested and banned from San Antonio for a decade. Yet it was his near-death experiences that revealed just how fragile the Prince of Darkness really was. In December 2003, Ozzy was nearly killed in an ATV accident at his Buckinghamshire estate, fracturing multiple bones and requiring metal rods to be implanted in his spine and neck. Recovery was long and brutal, but even then he refused to quit. Then in 2019, another devastating fall at his home dislodged those same implants, forcing him into more invasive surgeries and plunging him into agony that robbed him of mobility and independence. Around this time came the news that fans had long feared. Ozzy had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, a progressive condition that attacked his body and left him struggling to walk, stand, and even perform the simplest tasks. For Ozzy Osbourne, the bond with his fans has always been the one constant in a life marked by chaos, addiction, and near-death survival. His concerts were never just shows. They felt like tribal gatherings where misfits, outcasts, and rebels found a home in the darkness of his music. Songs like Crazy Train, War Pigs, and Mr. Crowley were not just hits, they were lifelines for people who felt unseen, giving them an anthem to scream back at the world that rejected them. As Ozzy prepares to step off the stage for the very last time, the weight of his legacy becomes impossible to ignore. He may be stepping away, but he has already transcended mortality. The man may one day be gone, but the legend of Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness who refused to bow to fate, will live on forever.